Hello, this is the Christian Anarchist, and I'm here with another video presentation with a slideshow on the topic of cults. What are cults? Well, we're about to discover that and how we can identify them, and to answer the question, is Christianity a cult? Well, the first thing we have to ask ourselves is, what is a cult and how do we define one? Well, according to the Oxford Dictionary, and especially the one they use online, if you look it up, it'll say it is a system of religious veneration and devotion directed toward a particular figure or object. Well, then the question gets asked, wouldn't that make all religions cults if it's going by this? Well, not entirely, because when it comes to a cult, if you notice the behaviors that get them labeled as a cult, it goes even farther than the mainstream religions when it comes to trying to win over converts. Now, an example of cults and cult leaders are people like Charles Manson, Jim Jones, Marshall Applewhite, and the Jehovah's Witnesses, just to name some few. Now, I will go over the ways to identify the cult based on one key feature that they all share, and that is mind control. Now, this may sound like some kind of superhero thing, but it is not. This is literally how they trick you with their tactics, and we're going to go over them. Now, here's a little illustration to show how these mind control tactics work. Around some year, I forget the year exactly, but there was an experiment performed by a social psychologist by the name of Solomon E. Ash. And what this was there were 5 people in a room, and they were going to be shown pictures like this. Exhibit 1 would be the main line, but A, B, and C on Exhibit 2 would consist of several lines, and the people were asked to say which line is closely related to Exhibit 1. Now, 4 of the people were secretly told to say the wrong answers, while 1 was a controlled part of the experiment to see if he would do what the hypothesis was. Would this person conform to saying the wrong answers just because these other people were saying what the majority was, instead of actually trying to use reason and logic to determine the evidence? And after several repeated questions in the experiment, the man ended up giving up, one of the people gave up their use of the knowledge and trying to observe, and instead did what the experiment was about, which was conforming, and the person ended up conforming because most people were given the wrong answers, and this person was convinced that these people were right. So, this is an example of cult-like tactics, and a social experiment managed to prove just how interesting and just how effective these tactics are. Now, one of them is called deception. No legitimate group needs to lie or hide about their beliefs and practices before recruiting people to join the group. You will see a good side to them that's more like what they present on TV commercials before you go to buy the real thing and you find out it's not as interesting as they made it out. For example, if you've ever seen food commercials for fast food, you'll notice that the food in the TV looks delicious and juicy, mouth-watering and perfect until you actually go buy it, and it doesn't exactly look like that chicken sandwich or cheeseburger you've seen on the TV. Now, an example. If Marshall Applewhite of Heaven's Gate wanted to be honest while recruiting people to join his cult, he would say something probably like this in an ad. Join us, wear strange clothes, get castrated, and then drink some poison. Now think about how many people he would win over if that was the slogan for Heaven's Gate. Now, exclusivism. Exclusivism is a group. Here's how this works. If you're in a group that says you must belong to this particular group in order to be saved, you're in a cult. That's a sure sign of it. A perfect example is the Church of Wales, the Westboro Baptist Church, and the Jehovah's Witnesses. These are all groups that claim if you don't follow their specific doctrine or even go to their church, then you're not part of the one true church, or you're not following the one true God, and therefore you're not saved. Another tactic is called fear and intimidation. Cult leaders are feared by their followers, and their belief is that if you disagree with the leader, then you disagree with God Almighty Himself. Now, some of them will use the following type of techniques of involving fear and intimidation: character assassination, guilt, and the breaking sessions. Now, character assassination, also known as the ad hominem fallacy, is quite a dishonest tactic that involves playing the victim in a situation where one didn't appear to be a victim. Now, here's a good example involving not religion, but math solutions. A man by the name of Jim, who is in a cult of the mathematics spaghetti monster, says that 1 plus 1 equals 3. Joe, on the other hand, who is not in a cult, he's either religious or non-religious, says, well, I disagree, Jim, because when I have one thing, and then I have another thing, I have two things. Now, a perfect illustration of the character assassination attempt would be Jim saying, I've been studying mathematics for a long time, Joe. How dare you challenge me and my authority and my knowledge in mathematics? You know why? You only disagree with me because you are jealous of me, and your belief in 1 plus 1 equals 2 is hurting me, everybody, and most importantly, it's hurting God, and it's even hurting you, and you don't even know it. Your beliefs are ridiculous, and that's probably why your 1 plus 1 equals 2 mentality is distorting your view on all other kinds of things, because you do not follow the true answer of 1 plus 1 equals 3. Sorry for my rant there, but let us continue. Relationship control. Now, beware of the groups that tell you who you can and cannot see. An example is the former Church of Wales, the Jehovah's Witnesses, and the Westboro Baptist Church members, where they have stated on interviews that they were not allowed to communicate with people who were non-believers or even their own family members that were Christians, but they didn't conform to these specific belief systems. Another thing to be aware for is instant friends in the groups. Now, instant friends are a result of a technique called love bombing, where you get assigned your friends or lovers. And this is pretty much where the pastor or the leader or whoever will say, this is the person you're going to be friends with, go mingle with him and all that. And this is pretty much one sure sign of being in a cult. Now, information control. If you're instructed not to read anything that is critical of the claims of the group, then you're in a cult. Legitimate groups have nothing to fear if their beliefs are honest and true. Now, sometimes they will use information from their material of holy books and other sources of information that are fabricated to trick people into believing in them. Now, some groups will even tell their followers to avoid debating or explain the reasons behind their faith. So in the end, nothing really gets explained of their faith, of their cult, or their religious group, whatever you want to call it. Nothing really gets explained because they're told to avoid these confrontations. Alright, so next is reporting structure. In this tactic, if you gotta ask yourself this question: that is information that you expect to be kept confidential reported to the leader? Well, if it is, then you're in a cult. That's a sure sign of it. In a cult, it will pretty much be like Nazi Germany or Communist Russia, where the walls have ears. Now, this tactic is downright an invasion of privacy and is the most deceitful tactic a cult will ever use in their array of tactics, because it's pretty much trying to control what happens. It's how they best understand people and try to control them. Now, time control. Now, okay, does sound like another power thing, but it's not. Bear with me here. Time control is basically a never-ending compulsory meetings and tasks that show this is a sign of a cult. Now, mind control cults keep their members so busy with meetings and activities that they become too busy and too tired to think about their involvement. So pretty much, I do hate bringing this group up as if they're a cult, and I don't see all young Earth creationists as a cult, but people like Answers in Genesis use a bunch of materials for their programs, and they have a bunch of different ways to... They have like a bunch of different programs, bunch of different books, and a bunch of everything that can really tire you out if you try to focus on all of them. That, yes, this is going to be something that's going to keep you too busy, too tired to think about your involvement. And, of course, Jehovah's Witnesses will use this tactic when it comes to their thing. I believe the Mormons do the same thing. That's all they do all day, with walking around asking people, have you accepted the Mormonism, Jesus. And I think this also will be used for the Church of Wells based on some of their tactics. But time control also helps the cult keep their members immersed in the manufactured cult environment. And time control helps keep cult members away from friends and family. So this is going back to what we discussed earlier with relationship control. Now, then the next question comes up. Is Christianity a cult? Well, I would have to say no, because Christians have heard the claims that it is a cult, and legit Christians do not have anything to hide or deceive. We also do not alter or use cherry-picking to back up our own personal beliefs if we are actually being spiritually honest, intellectually honest, and just being honest in general. Whenever somebody asks questions, well, we answer their questions with honesty and even encourage them to look and learn for themselves, since they should not just take our word for it. Look into God's word. Look into what the scholars say. Look at to what geology, look into what history tells us. And also, that's pretty much it. In conclusion, Christianity is not a cult because it does not follow the signs or symptoms of your typical cult. Some people in different churches may have one or two, possibly, but that doesn't specify a cult. It has to follow more than one or two of them. And these cult signs are repetitive. And that way, if it's more than one or two, and these are repetitive signs, then you can definitely tell that you're in a cult. Anyways, that's all the time we got for the lesson. So until then, Shalom Aleichem. Peace be upon you, because I wish that upon you.
Subscribe to this channel. You know why? Because he's the cream of the crop. So if you're the cream, you gotta subscribe. Dig it!